Welcome to another edition of Monday Night Best Ball here at Spike Week, where we've been hit with a flurry of news just before training camp. DeAndre Hopkins to the Tennessee Titans, some running back anger, uncomfortability, frustration from the running back Saquon Barkley not signing an extension, Josh Jacobs not signing an extension, and Tony Pollard as well. What does all this mean? How do we put it into practice in our drafts? We're going to do that tonight in a fast puppy on Underdog Fantasy. Let's do it. All right, guys. Happy Monday. Happy insane, crazy best ball and fantasy football day, weekend with way more news than we probably should have gotten at this point right before training camp. But tonight, we're going to dive into a little bit of what does the DeAndre Hopkins news mean? What does this mean with all of these running backs not very happy with their current contract situations? What's going to happen? Who's going to fall? Who's going to rise? And who should we target? How should we approach these things? And we're going to see if we can put them into practice a little bit here in the fast puppy. First of all, welcome. Good evening, Chris. Good evening. Let's talk first. Sup, Olaf. Let's talk DeAndre Hopkins really quick, because I think that's honestly kind of one of the more straightforward ones. If you're looking to talk a little bit more on some of the nuances, how to approach some of these things, make sure in the description to this video, there's a link to the Spike Week Discord, which is 100% free. Anyone can join. You can hang out, chat with all the sickos all around. Thank you, Al. All is well. It has been storming like a mother here for like a week straight. Had another gnarly thunderstorm this afternoon. It's like every day, and it's not all day. Like, it was sunny and beautiful this morning. Absolutely beautiful. And then all of a sudden, poof, this afternoon for a couple hours, just gnarly thunderstorms, severe thunderstorm warnings all around. And this has been like a week straight of it's beautiful and sunny. And then for a few hours during the day or at night, overnight, whatever, crazy, insane storms. Weird weather. But what is also weird is what's going on in these best ball streets. Make sure you hop into the Discord and join the conversation in there, which is 24/7, 365, not just here live on YouTube. But with Hopkins, like I said, I think it's a little pretty straightforward, actually. First, let's start with DeAndre Hopkins. Was pretty much known to be a cut or trade candidate for the longest time ever. We've pretty much known this. He was kind of tossed into the fourth round-ish, give or take, particularly on Underdog, where we'll be drafting tonight, because the assumption was he was not going to be back with the Cardinals, right? So we're hoping that this, a little bit older but still very talented and effective veteran wide receiver would land somewhere, pipe dreaming the Chiefs, the Bills, the Chargers, someone like that. And then he gets cut by the Cardinals, and there's not really much interest, at least not in clearing the cap space that would be required, particularly for someone like the Chiefs, who had very little cap space to sign and pay the amount of money that DeAndre Hopkins wanted to pay or wanted to be paid. It's a funny thing about these, something to keep in mind, and something I try to keep in mind anytime we have situations like this, which we'll get to with the running backs here in a second, is it's easy for us to sit back as fantasy football bros and say, look, DeAndre Hopkins has made a bunch of money. He probably wants to go somewhere and win. He'll take a small amount of money just to go on the Chiefs, right? He doesn't care. But like these at the end, hey, these guys are still young. DeAndre Hopkins is 31. He's not 60. He's younger than me, probably younger than some of you guys or all of you guys. You only have so many years and so much up, right? This money has to set him up and his family up and his kids and for lives and generations. And taking $1 million when you can get 20, it's a big freaking difference. And you're asking someone else just because we think as fantasy football players the guy should go to the Chiefs. You're asking him to take $1 million or, a couple $1 million as opposed to 15, 20, 12, whatever it is that Hopkins got. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so a lot of the times what we'll see is these guys still want to get paid, as they should. They only get so many chances to make that much money. And Hopkins still wanted to get paid a certain amount that was fitting of a player of his talent and his track record. And places like the Chiefs are not able to do that. And not necessarily not able. They would have to really kick the can down the road a little bit with some money to clear the space, right? You can kind of always manipulate the cap to clear the space, but eventually you do have to pay the piper. And they're really trying to, the Chiefs, as we saw with the Tyreek Hill move and trade, they're trying to be kind of making sure that they're like always in this championship window with Patrick Mahomes. They don't want to get a couple years down the road and be in a place with maybe the best quarterback of all time where they can't field a contender. So they're being pretty smart about it. I like it, kind of trying to manufacture wide receiver production. All that being said, DeAndre Hopkins signs with the Titans because I do think they can win. Not to the level of winning the Super Bowl, but that division is not very good. The Jags seem to be are the clear favorite. The betting favorite won the division last year, seemed to be very clearly the best team, but I don't think the Jags are some flawless roster that a team like the Titans with a head coach like Mike Vrabel, with a bunch of veterans who just had the best record in the AFC a couple of years ago. I don't think that they perceive this as a situation where they can't come out and win this division, particularly with Ryan Tannehill back, Derrick Henry back, and then you add Hopkins to Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo. The offense looks pretty good, actually, with a decent offensive line. The defense has some concerns, but in terms of fantasy for DeAndre Hopkins, I think it's really just kind of about net neutral for him. I think we'll probably hear a lot about and talk a lot about really breaking down exact target shares and those kinds of things. I don't know that whether we want to say, it's a 24% target share or a 28% target share. I don't know that that's necessarily worth our time. What I would say is it's definitely going to be a condensed offense. That's how the Titans operate. I think we can liken it a little bit back to the A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, or A.J. Brown and Julio Jones year. Certainly these players are not the exact same, and Derrick Henry is much older and Tannehill's a little bit older. But I think in terms of how the offense operates, right, we're going to get a lot that the targets are really going to flow to three guys: DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, and Chig Okonkwo. But they're also going to be a run-heavy team. And so I think, particularly on Underdog, we get past, say, a DK Metcalf or a Deebo Samuel, or if you Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, wherever you kind of think that cutoff line is. And I think Hopkins has been going in that range amongst the Christian Watsons and Keenan Allens and Terry McLaurins and Drake Londons. It's a big, wide group of wide receivers there. And I think ultimately he still just kind of belongs right there. Same kind of spot he has been going. It's certainly not if he did land on the Chiefs, we'd probably be talking about second round DeAndre Hopkins and what do we do with him there as the alpha, wide receiver with Patrick Mahomes, but that is not what we're at. But he's still, while fading a little bit as a 30 or 31 year old wide receiver is just going to do. He's not total peak Houston DeAndre Hopkins or year one on Arizona DeAndre Hopkins, and he is in a run heavy offense. And so he is going to command his fair share of targets. I think the Titans offense is going to be totally fine. And the defense, in particular, the pass defense, is quite bad. And so, they are going to run through Derrick Henry, but I think we could see some, shootouts in Tennessee games. And so DeAndre Hopkins, I think, as the lead wide receiver and the lead pass game weapon on the Titans in this early fourth round is about where I think he deserves to be, kind of where he's been. So it would be fun to say, we got to move Hopkins way down because of where he signed, or we got to move Hopkins way up. But really, I think it's mostly about net neutral, given where he has been going. It's certainly not the best landing spot that we could have had, but I don't think it's the worst. As Andrew says here, I think it's better Andrew says, I think this is a better landing spot than New England. It doesn't have to see Sauce twice a year. Yeah, that's fair. I try not to factor wide receiver cornerback matchups too much into particularly my season long and best ball analysis, but the New England division, having to play Buffalo, having to play the Jets defense, Miami, not super scared of the Miami defense, but the division certainly a better draw for him. And I think, Tennessee, for whatever we want to say about them, has kind of proven to be, when they have a certain requisite amount of talent on the offense, to be a totally capable offense. And so I think it's about net neutral for DeAndre Hopkins. I actually think the two, maybe three guys that I do want to mention with Nuke that are maybe I have a little bit of a different perception in terms of how it impacts them, this signing in Tennessee, is we'll start with Treylon Burks. I think we're going to see a decent fall from Treylon Burks, and I don't really think that is appropriate. I think that this is a second-year, first-round pick wide receiver who is going to be in this condensed offense. And something that I subscribe to that, nothing is foolproof, but generally speaking, you score fantasy points by being good at the game and or by being on a good offense, right? We see this all the time where, let's take Brandon Cooks as an example last year, where we can clearly project a really heavy target share onto a player, but he's on a bad offense that is incredibly unlikely to score a lot of points. Because you can project a certain target share, the season-long projections and all of that can make this player look more appealing than they are, because you have to give, you have to put a certain amount of production onto every NFL team, and you have to give it to somebody. And then you get a Brandon Cooks issue, or a couple years ago, Allen Robinson on the Bears, where these offenses are just not good enough and just not efficient enough that the volume can make up for the level of the offense. Adding good players to your offense can, of course, hurt your target share projection, and Treylon Burks is going to project for a lower target share with DeAndre Hopkins in town. Shocker, spoiler alert. But the offense takes such a big step forward when you add really good players to it and efficient players to it, that I don't really see this as a loss for Treylon Burks either. His absolutely monster seasons where he's a first-round pick next year are probably not within the range of outcomes anymore, but actually wouldn't even say that it's not in the range of outcomes. I would say that it's just much, much, much lower probability. If he's good, if he was good enough for you to draft him where he was going before, or if he was good enough for the market to say this guy is a 6th-round pick, like even like 5th-round pick on Underdog or on Drafters, if he was going in the 5th to the 7th round on an offense with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine as the wide receiver 2 and Kyle Phillips, and concerns about the Titans tanking off the season in the second half, if he was worth that price before, he's good enough in a now probably a good offense to absolutely be worth a pick in his 6th, 7th round ADP. But I think he's going to fall, and so he's already been someone I've been drafting, not taking a big stand on. But Treylon Burks is a guy to me who I think is going to fall, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily appropriate. I also think spinning this into the real big winner of this, for me, the key takeaway more than any one of these individual players is, if we were worried about the Titans, like I said, tanking it off, punting off the season, playing for Caleb Williams or Drake May or a top pick next year, certainly wouldn't be worried about that anymore. We've talked about that on quite a few different shows here, where I don't think we actually talked about it in a very recent video where myself, Silas, Beekert, and Trev, 3 of my Spike Week compadres, are drafting a $555 team on DraftKings in a slow draft, and breaking down all of our picks along the way in separate videos. You can find that on the channel. If you subscribe, get notified every time we post a new video there. We talked about the Titans. And I don't think it's really in the Titans' DNA to tank off a season anyway. I don't think that's what Mike Vrabel has signed up for, a rebuild. And they may get forced into it eventually, but I don't think that they're ready to do that. And I think this is the greatest indicator of that we could possibly get. that the Titans are not interested in punting it off and playing Will Levis for most of the season, and just playing the young guys. Hopkins also wouldn't come there if they weren't going to try to win. And so what does that mean? Well, it means, you certainly don't have shutdown risk for Treylon Burks, whether you did or not before. You definitely can be drafting Ryan Tannehill at the end of drafts. Now, a terrible season last year for Ryan Tannehill, of course, sans A.J. Brown, kind of a mess in Tennessee all around. But just 2 years ago, we're talking about a quarterback who's the quarterback 12 overall, produced multiple spike weeks, does have a little bit of rushing juice. He's not Justin Fields. He's not Jalen Hurts, but he has this sneaky little goal line rushing upside where they get down there, right? Fake it to Derrick Henry and he keeps it. And now you have DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, Chigakonkwo to throw the ball to, particularly, off of this play action with Derrick Henry, all that fun hand in the dirt stuff. But Ryan Tannehill was going where he was going because there were concerns about him playing the whole season, not necessarily his median projection, although his median projection was a little bit sketchy with Nick Westbrook-Akine as a starting wide receiver. You replace that with DeAndre Hopkins, all of a sudden this offense has some real talent on it. And Tannehill is a very capable quarterback, like I said, with a little bit of rushing juice that he's going to be a priority target for me moving forward, maybe even in this draft. Zachary says, Tannehill already supported 2,000-yard seasons with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, and now Henry is older, so I'm confident that both can produce, meaning Treylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins. I totally agree. We do have Chig there, who I also like this for Chig, too. Again, I would rather take a couple percentage points off of my target share for a talented player and give me more efficiency and more touchdown upside and a more potent offense. And so I think generally speaking, the Titans just overall look more appealing here for all these different reasons. Let's talk about the running backs really quickly before we pop in this draft. We're going to get some really major falling action, I think, on these running backs. If you missed it, today was the deadline for the franchise tag running backs to sign an extension of a longer term contract. And so Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, and Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard will be playing this upcoming season. I believe he has already signed his tag, but the other two have not. And both, particularly Saquon, has voiced a lot of displeasure about his situation with the Giants. And Josh Jacobs, everything coming out from Raiders beat reporters and just everything out of camp is Josh Jacobs certainly is not going to be reporting to training camp anytime soon. And so from a drafting sense, I would start assuming that these guys are going to fall. And so before we even get into predicting how this thing plays out, I would be pushing these. If you want to get your taste of Saquon Barkley, of Josh Jacobs, maybe even Tony Pollard, I would start to see how far these rooms will let these guys fall and start to pick them off. Can you get fourth round? Right? I already saw just a little bit ago, I took Saquon in the late third round. Who knows how far these guys will fall? I think every room, until it starts to stabilize and we get a little more news, every room is going to be a little bit different, but that's opportunity for us in drafts. Assuming you want to get some of these guys. I think in a tournament like this Fast Puppy, which is going to close, is going to fill very, very shortly. If I'm trying to target these guys, it's a great time to do so. Maybe you've been fading them because of this risk and uncertainty around them. Now you're going to get the cheapest prices on those guys in the whole tournament, and it's going to fill really quickly. And so that's something I'm going to be looking to do. I don't have much Josh Jacobs. I have some Saquon. I have a good chunk of Pollard. But as these guys start to fall, it's the perfect time to start building them into your portfolio. And that's because I think it's incredibly unlikely that they miss the whole season. I think that's the general sentiment you'll see that was in our Discord and maybe different folks that you follow on Twitter. There's not a ton of incentive for these guys to sit out the whole year. They will forfeit millions of dollars in hope, if let's say they were to sit out the whole season, with the hope that they would sign a bigger deal in the offseason, right? You don't want to risk getting injured this year if you have a big contract coming after the season. That would be reason to hold out. The problem is what we've now seen almost entirely across the league, except for, shout out to the Panthers for paying Miles Sanders a bunch of money. The league is just not the league. Almost every team has decided running backs are not valuable, and maybe they're finally catching on to something we've all known for quite some time. But it's going to be very tough for these guys to kind of make up this money that you would get paid on the franchise tag in a deal in this offseason, particularly given their age and the newfound kind of league sentiment around what running backs are valued at. They have some injury concerns. Saquon has already blown out his knee before. Ankle injuries, right? Josh Jacobs didn't have a serious injury last year, but he was basically a game time decision like the whole second half of the season. And when you rack up that kind of mileage on a running back, it's tough, and it's going to be tough to really get a big contract. And so I would operate with the expectation that they play this year. However, I would not be overconfident in A, that they do play this year, or B, specifically how many games they play. I think in any situation like this, set aside analyzing the financial ramifications for these running backs and all of that. I think it's important that we don't get overconfident in our assessment of a situation. I think it absolutely makes all the sense in the world, right? When you start to rack and stack all the potential reasons and the financial implications of this, that they would just take this money and unfortunately bite the bullet and say, look, this is what it is. It sucks, but I just have to take this money. I can't afford to lose out on this amount of money as a running back given the market. But that really removes a lot of the human element of this. We can sit here and say that, right? We just talked about DeAndre Hopkins. We can sit here in our desk chair, on our couch, drafting best ball teams and say, if I were Hopkins, I would just go to the Chiefs for very little money, right? But that's not how these things work out all the time. Saquon, in particular, has voiced his displeasure with the Giants and them kind of not rewarding him for being a key part of this team for such a long time. And you never know what individual humans are thinking. Saquon, in particular, has made quite a bit of money already. You never know if he feels really comfortable in his financial situation and wants to, be healthy to get one more contract. You never know. I don't think it would be wise for us to go in and be overconfident about exactly what's going to happen with these players, because like most of these situations, we talk about this with I like to talk about this with, say, backup running backs. People will say, well, all this, it should be Chase Brown in Cincinnati for all these different reasons. And that I think that totally makes sense. But the team doesn't even know, who is going to be Joe Mixon's backup. It could be a free agent. It could be Travion Williams. It could be Chris Evans. Of course, it could be Chase Brown. But the team is going to see in training camp and in the preseason. It's a camp battle, right? I don't think that Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs know what they plan to do. And they got time to figure it out. They got time to talk to their financial advisors and their family and their mentors and all this stuff, right? And they don't know. So how can we be that confident when those guys don't even know? They could skip the first part of the season. They could skip half the season. They could skip the whole season. They could report soon, for all that we know. I don't think we have any real way to know it, but what we do know is how our fellow best ball drafters are going to approach it. And I think our fellow best ball drafters are absolutely going to be off these guys, certainly at their costs. Saquon in the second round, Jacobs at the 2-3 turn. These guys are going to be big fallers. And so it's something to really take into account when we are building out these teams. I think specifically in time pockets, these drafts that are in little time pockets, like the puppies and that kind of thing, it's something we can really manipulate to our advantage. All right. Before we hop into that kind of covers those things. Before we hop into our puppy draft, I did just want to pull up some settings that you will see here with our Spike Week draft hacker. So on my screen, There's going to be a lot of, if you've tuned in before, you've probably seen it. So bear with me for a second. If you haven't tuned in before, you're going to see on my screen lots of different colors, lots of different settings, lots of different percentages all over the place. And I wanted to bring up what I like to use personally in my drafts while I'm drafting my own specific underdog teams to help me make decisions using the Draft Hacker. So if you're a subscriber, once you have downloaded the premium extension, right? So you sign up, there's a page how to set up the Draft Hacker and Draft IQ under help on the website. Go there, get everything set up, and then you can go to the extension under Firefox, and there's extension options, I believe. Yes, extension options. And then you get to select both for Underdog. See here on your screen, you can select Underdog specific settings, DraftKings specific settings, and drafters. So it'll show whatever you pick for each site on here. For me, I highlight I have a few different things that I do. At the top, you see I want correlations to be highlighted, meaning players that play against other opponents, in week 17, as an example, and also teammates, right? If I have Tua, I want Waddle. That's a bad example. If I have Jalen Hurts, I want Dallas Goedert to be highlighted in here because it's just a constant reminder like, oh, yep, remember Eagles on this team. You got Eagles on this team. And I don't have to think. It's just showing me on the screen. And then, of course, I do list the week 15, 16, and 17 games on here. And those also highlight correlations, right? On both sides, opponents and same team. And then I show my overall exposure for this tournament. And you can select through the different tournaments, right? So if we're drafting the Fast Puppy, I can show my exposure for the Fast Puppy on here. But I also show my exposure overall for all tournaments. Again, it says tournaments that share these same rankings. So it wouldn't include, if we do rookies and sophomores again, or super flex, those are excluded. But anything that has the same rankings, I can see over across all these tournaments what my exposure is to that player. Because sometimes it's wildly different in, right, Best Ball Mania plus Puppy plus Chihuahua plus Poodle versus just Best Ball Mania. And then the last two things that I really like to show are my exposure to the player when I've drafted that first round pick. So let's say I drafted Cooper Kupp in the first round. It's going to show me on the player list, on the board, on the queue, whatever you want to call it. There's the fifth number, I think it is, on my maybe fourth number on my Draft Hacker on the screen is my exposure to that player on teams with Cooper Kupp. And then the same thing on teams with that second round pick. I should have said, sorry. And I also have it with my quarterback. And you see /pitcher here. So you can do it with if you draft MLB best ball teams, we have it set up for that. So you can see with your first pitcher. So again, I draft Jalen Hurts. Thereafter, I can see what fifth round wide receivers am I generally taking with Jalen Hurts? Because I don't want to fall into traps of always taking the same guys with Jalen Hurts when there's not necessarily a reason to do it, right? Of course, drafting Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert and those guys with Jalen Hurts makes more sense, or even Cardinals if you're looking at week 17. But I don't want to fall into the trap of why do all my Jalen Hurts teams have Deontay Johnson on them for no reason? And that helps me do that as well as with the first round pick and second round pick. So I wanted to pull that up because there's going to be a whole lot of stuff on the screen, and it's easy with a whole bunch of numbers and colors and all that different stuff on there to get confused. So I wanted to walk through that really quickly. So let's go ahead and let me share my screen and get into this Fast Puppy and see if we can't. Looks like we need 5 people. Let me zoom in a little bit. 4 people, 3, 1, 2, 0, 10, 11 filled. $104. Beautiful. We'll call that the influencer 104 because just give me a top 5 pick, man. I mean, who doesn't want Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase? But just give me one of these top 5 picks. That's almost all I care about it. But again, here, so you see this, the Draft Hacker's up and running right now. I have it set to show Best Ball Mania exposure because that's the tournament I've drafted the most into so far. This is only my 10th Fast Puppy. I don't think I'm going to do anymore. So Best Ball Mania helps me show. But again, you see this very first percentage here. If you hover over it, if you have the draft hacker, you can't see it here because when you're sharing your screen and you hover, it doesn't show the whatever you want to call it. I forget what the hell it's called when you hover over something. But anyway, tooltip. Doesn't show your little tooltip here. But if you hover over the number, right? So I'm hovered over 7%. And on my screen, it says tourney percentage. So that's the amount that I have in Best Ball Mania 4 over here. Second number being my overall exposure across all tournaments. And then here's where my percentage with my first quarterback, my percentage with my first round pick, my percentage with my second round pick there. And then, of course, as we get through here, we will show all sorts of other goodies, team views, playoff views for weekly winners if you have game stats and all that kind of fun stuff. So I'm going to take Tyreek Hill. If you use the Spike Week rankings, which I don't have them uploaded here, I like to draft off of ADP. I have Christian McCaffrey 5th overall behind both Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill. AJ Brown goes 105. Interesting. But I want to be overweight if at all possible. I do like Christian McCaffrey, but I'm comfortable being a little underweight on Christian McCaffrey. I'm not going to have 0 because he does, as you see here, he fell to the 106. I'm going to have some Christian McCaffrey, but in order to get over on Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, I got to take those guys. And in particular, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, I got to take over Christian McCaffrey. And that's what I do. Looks like we got an overflow draft here. Vaporware's in the overflow draft. D. Ross, I don't know if you're in the overflow draft, but missed. This one. We'll be doing plenty more drafts along the way this offseason. I assure you. Now I'm zoomed in too far. There we go. Looks like fairly straightforward first round here in the Fast Puppy. I'm interested to see what happens with those running backs. And like I said, pretty standard, but certainly not a total wide receiver bro room, which is nice with Eckler and Bijan and Chubb already off the board here. Pretty standard. I will say with the Jacobs news, I tweeted about this as well. I would be a little concerned about Devontae. I'm already concerned about Devontae. I don't draft him that much. I'm a known Jimmy G kind of hater, but I also, even if I weren't, I'm definitely very concerned about the fit with Devontae and Jimmy G. I understand the thought process that Devontae is QB proof and all that kind of stuff, but it's just a concern that I have now. Jacobs potentially holding out. There's some pretty serious issues. So anyway, we see here on my screen with my first round pick, Tyreek Hill, I have 11% Devonta Smith, 11% T. Higgins. I want to go look at the old Ravens, 52% Mark Andrews with those guys. So I'm actually I've got my fair share of Mark Andrews and Tyreek Hill there. 50% of my Tyreek Hill teams in Best Ball Mania have Mark Andrews on them. So I am looking to kind of make sure I want a lot of that pairing, but I also don't want to have none of these other pairings. So does set me up if I want to do something with Hurts, keeps me out in front of the wide receiver issues, and lets me potentially scoop, if I want to, some value on the running backs. Also think, I didn't mention him, but Ramondre Stevenson, with the latest news, the Patriots are now the betting favorite for Dalvin Cook to sign there. I suspect we'll get a dip on Ramondre Stevenson as well. So, watching those guys and seeing kind of how just their ADPs evolve here over these next couple of weeks is really interesting. You also see here I have a good clip of Breece Hall, 11% in Best Ball Mania, 19% overall, and 22% with Tyreek Hill, only 9% with Devonta Smith. So Breece has been my favorite third round running back all along, including over Jacobs, including over Ramondre, etc., including over Derrick Henry. But We shall see. Hurts goes. I was considering Hurts there. Now I have to decide if I do want to do the Andrews thing again. Thinking out loud here. Let's think about this. Looking at the screen here. Andrews, week 17. Brees, week 15. Lamar, week 17. And I think I can push those other running backs. I'm going to do Lamar here, actually. I don't suspect. But because I have so much Andrews with Tyreek and a little less Lamar with Tyreek, I want to make sure I get my fair. And I love Lamar. Love Lamar. Love the Ravens. Give me Ravens stacks and Ravens onslaughts as much as I can get. But just kind of using that as a little bit of a tiebreaker. You never know. I certainly would not expect Mark Andrews to fall back. But also, I do like Brees a lot. I have a good amount of Brees and a decent amount of Brees with Tyreek already. And its potential, if I wanted to dive into the Josh Jacobs sweepstakes, if he were to fall, that would set me up to do so. Let's pull back the board up here. And so nothing super crazy in this draft in particular. Saquon still goes 18th overall. Ramondre goes 31st and Josh Jacobs goes 32nd. So a little bit of a fall, but nothing really that crazy, if we're being totally honest. Not a major fall as of yet, but I suspect that's going to change. I suspect some of these, certainly all the quarterbacks, I think, probably continue to go ahead of Ramondre, Jacobs. Not necessarily Saquon, but I do think Saquon's going to fall here. But Ramondre, Jacobs in particular, all the quarterbacks go ahead of. And I think we see Andrews for sure settle in ahead of Josh Jacobs and some of these wide receivers. You already saw Calvin Ridley and Amari Cooper go ahead of Jacobs in this draft and go ahead of Ramondre. I think Debo can get up there. I would not be super surprised if the Chargers guys got up there. I think it's reasonably likely we start to get a good amount of fourth round Jacobs, maybe even fourth round Ramondre, as people prep for Dalvin and as people prep for this long kind of standoff, hold out from Josh Jacobs. So we're setting up a little Ravens. Amen to Jamie in the chat. Ravens all day. I'm loading up, baby. We are loading up on the Ravens and not thinking twice about it. So here's the question. You see very little. I'm actually going to take Hopkins here. I take a lot of DJ Moore, as you can see on your screen here, 25% DJ Moore, very little DeAndre Hopkins, but getting a totally reasonable price here on him. I talked about how I am pretty down for the Titans. Love the playoff schedule. Got a little mini overlap in the playoff schedule where Devonta Smith plays the Seahawks in week 15 and Hopkins plays the Seahawks in week 16. So, small things, not a big deal, but small little things. And I had not drafted very much DeAndre Hopkins. And so I'm not saying I'm going out of my way to draft him, but I'm kind of trying to draft all of these guys in this 4th, 5th round of wide receivers. And I think Tannehill's going to rise, and Tannehill makes for a fun kind of cheap second quarterback on a Lamar team on a Ravens stack that I'll be looking to a little bit later. Let's see, Aaron Jones. Fields falling was interesting. Maybe I shouldn't have taken Lamar. I guess, well, yeah, DJ Moore. I could have taken DJ Moore and possibly Fields here because K Connection has takes Ayuk. Son of a. All right. We're going to do one of my favorite things and take J.K. Dobbins with Lamar and with this starting to build out this Ravens stack. One thing I really like to do, it's good across the board, in my opinion, but we've talked a lot about, in particular, if you've watched the legendary Sickos weekly show that I do with Pat Kerrane of Legendary Upside and Ship Chasing, and of course, Best Ball Mania 3 Championship, $2 million fame. We've recently talked on recent episodes, which come out every Thursday here on this YouTube channel, ways to manufacture playoff leverage. And one of them in particular is stacking a team, right? So I'm stacking the Ravens, but including their running back with, the quarterback in a pass catcher or multiple pass catchers. In that scenario where this potentially hits in the playoffs, you could potentially create leverage in a week where, let's say, in week 16 against the 49ers, maybe not a great example because I know everybody's very scared of the 49ers defense. Let's say in week 15, they play the Jags and it's a J.K. Dobbins week, maybe a down week for Lamar. My second quarterback, let's say it's Ryan Tannehill on this team. They play the Texans. Ryan Tannehill throws 3 touchdowns. They all go to DeAndre Hopkins, but J.K. Dobbins is the Ravens smash in week 15, right? Gets me to advance. And now maybe I get a lower owned Ravens passing stack moving forward in the playoffs. Maybe they don't even blow up in week 16, but they're good, right? I get my Ravens stack into week 17, and all of a sudden we flip over the cards, and because J.K. Dobbins has had this great playoff run, poof, Lamar Jackson is low owned. Lamar Jackson to Rashad Bateman, maybe even, fingers crossed, Tyreek Hill on the other side. All of a sudden I have this low owned, maybe the best game stack or second best game stack right there with Bengals Chiefs is not super popular. It's underrepresented in the finals. And you can't guess what's going to be super popular in the playoffs. You can't guess what's going to be the most popular week 17 stack, right? George Kittle was one of the highest owned players in the week 17 final last year. Justin Jefferson, despite being a first round pick, a top part of the first round, was the highest owned player in week 17 last year. Austin Eckler was the RB1 overall in fantasy and available in the late first round of drafts and was not very popular. He's actually a big reason why Pat Kerrane won. But you can't we have no way to project that, but we can do little things, little micro edges, pull little micro levers in our drafts to try to manufacture it across all of our teams, right? And in particular, with a rushing quarterback, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? If the quarterback goes nuts, Lamar Jackson, he's probably adding some juice with his rushing. That hurts J.K. Dobbins. So you're probably not even using J.K. Dobbins' score in that week. But the flip side is also true. The weeks where J.K. Dobbins goes absolutely nuclear, he's rushing for a bunch of touchdowns, which are stealing it from your pass game. So they can kind of ping pong over the course of a season. The whole offense does well. That helps you. That's a good thing. Oh, now Burks is here. I'm going to see if I can push Burks. I'm going to draft Jahan Dotson, one of my favorite kind of 6th, 7th round wide receivers. We're going to see if we can push Burks down into the 7th round. See if he will fall. Vaporware says in the overflow draft, Barkley goes 19th. So pretty similar to this. Pretty close. Pretty close. Certainly falling from where they've been going most of the summer, but we not quite yet. It's day 1 of this news. Not quite yet to peak levels where I suspect that they'll fall to. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I feel pretty confident that those guys are going to fall, especially as time goes on. And they're not that's something that happens a lot as time goes on. So Burks does fall all the way back. I do think I'm just going to take him here, unless just looking at my, I have a lot of, interestingly, I have 30% Gabe Davis with Devonta Smith. So I kind of want to avoid that, actually. Just looking at some correlations, there's really nothing. So we are just going to take Burks here. If I had something to give me a little bit of a tiebreaker in terms of kind of ownership, exposure, I thought about something like a reach for Bateman, but I want to see if we can push that a little bit. And if I have to settle for Zay Flowers, I'm okay. I'm okay settling for Zay here, but kind of wanted to go ahead and lock in this Titans stack, which looks pretty tasty now. Not going to lie to you. 4th round DeAndre Hopkins, 7th, maybe even 8th round Treylon Burks. If you want to throw Chig in there with late round Ryan Tannehill. That feels pretty good, which is crazy to say because I have not been excited about the Titans, and you'll never get me to draft Derrick Henry. Not going to do it. Don't care. Not falling for the old ass running back. Also, my brand is way too important. We've made a brand fading Derrick Henry and drafting the Darrington Evans of the world. We go down with that ship. But it is funny with the Titans. Big narrative about Derrick Henry. Totally understandable. Plays the Texans, right? And plays, yeah, I mean, his playoff schedule, the Titans playoff schedule is great, but it seems to be typically only discussed in it as it pertains to Derrick Henry when it's a great matchup for the whole offense. Derrick Henry didn't even smash in his last game against the Texans. Plus, the Texans have gotten better on defense. I mean, they drafted Will Anderson this year. That should help with their front, at least. They've certainly gotten better on defense. This isn't the same Texans team of recent years, but if we assume it is at least a decent matchup, it is a decent matchup for all of the Titans. And Derrick Henry could run for 150 yards if he doesn't score multiple touchdowns. Like, sure, 20 points is good, but it's not like you had to have it. Other players are going to score 20 fantasy points. If it's the pass game, if it's Tannehill throwing 4 touchdowns, 2 of them go to Nuke, 2 of them go to Burks, now that feels pretty fun. And I really like that bet. There go. God damn it. I'm going to have to make this into an Odell team. Should have taken Bateman. But that's okay. I want to look at my Odell. Honestly, probably not the world's worst thing that I'm maybe forced into Odell here at a certain point, because as you see here, obviously correlates. Green for me, meaning you can also select the colors that show in your correlations and your exposures. Green meaning, he correlates with Lamar over here, but then the orange meaning he correlates right in week 17. And I don't draft Odell very much, as you can see. 2% Odell, 10% Odell with Lamar, 4% Odell with Tyreek, 0 Odell teams with Devonta Smith. So, yeah, we're coping, as our good friend Sacrilegious says. I'm very used to the copium that comes when you're forced into taking Odell. That's exactly what this is. This is straight copium. And I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say I hate this spot in the draft so much. So much. All right, we're going to take a little Zach Charbonnet here. As you see on your screen when I'm kind of trying to break some ties. I know it's a smidge before his ADP, but this is a pocket of the draft that is completely wide open to me. Absolutely no difference for me in really any of these guys. I don't draft Dalvin Cook. We also talked about that on the most recent Legendary Sickos. Make sure to go check that out. As you see, I have 1% Dalvin Cook across all tournaments, and that was not intentional. That was an auto draft. I also don't draft Michael Thomas. I don't draft Alvin Kamara. Open to changing on all of these guys, but as of right now, I'm just trying to draft some other players. And so in this just like totally wide open tier, you see Zach Charbonnet there. Clearly, I'm not very running back heavy with just J.K. Dobbins. And, he fits my week 16 Tennessee Titans and week 15 Devonta Smith with the Eagles. Also just, second round pick, rookie running back on a good offense. No issues with Zach Charbonnet. So just using kind of what the hacker is giving me to break these ties. I have some Zach Charbonnet. I'm not crazy overweight. So just a lot of these factors play in, and poof, I think he makes the most sense. So now here the problem is I'm going to have to freaking reach for Odell Beckham. Pain. I don't suspect he's going to come back to me. I hate it. Odell Beckham, 11 picks before ADP, but we're cope. If we're going to cope, let's fucking cope. Let's full cope. Just deal with it. You did this by taking Treylon Burks. You did this to yourself. Honestly, you did it by taking DeAndre Hopkins. You started this stupid Titans thing, spent 20 minutes talking about the Tennessee Titans, and that has now led you into drafting Odell Beckham. Now you've drafted DeAndre Hopkins and Odell Beckham on the same team. The pain is ML says the pain is palpable. That's a fact. Also a little bit of a tongue twister, which is not what you need when you're tilting your face off because you just took Odell Beckham 11 picks before ADP. In fairness, that whole little wide receiver, right? Tyler Boyd goes off the board. Odell was the third highest wide receiver by ADP, and it was Tyler Boyd, Allen Lazard, and Odell Beckham. The running back group, I obviously don't need a quarterback. The running back group is a ginormous tier, and we're in the tight end, what I would like kind of classify as the tight end dead zone. And so it's one of those things where if we had it to choose, we just get like sick ADP value on everybody, right? But you get into all these different pockets of the draft where it's like, well, I don't need or necessarily want a quarterback here. The running backs, there's like 10 of them. So one of them is probably getting back to me anyway. And the stack is the most important thing. I need Lamar Jackson. If he blows up and is the third round quarterback that you need, he's going to be throwing some fucking touchdowns. I want to benefit from those touchdowns, right? And I need that stack. It's the highest priority thing, given everything else that's available on the board and given everything else that I have drafted on to my team. And like, you just got to weigh all those things when you come on the clock. And shout out to KZ, who's clearly the one who screwed me. Just took Zay. No big deal. No correlation. No nothing. Just felt he's got a cool name. I get it. We just been sitting here, the chat and myself, Jamie, we've been out here hyping up the Ravens. So you felt you're getting, it was moving. All the Ravens chatter was making it move for KZ, and he forced me into Odell. Chris says, I came in here to cure my depression and I'm leaving with more. That's if you titled a stream, an Odell Beckham stream, I drafted Odell Beckham, this would be the tagline. Come to cure your depression, leave with more. The Odell Beckham best ball draft. Not in love, but as ML says, all right, 1 second. We are back on the clock. Damien Harris goes, which is probably good. If you saw on your screen there, I have a whole lot of Damien Harris, a player who I don't have a lot of at the top of the queue here. I'm clearly in need of kind of a little bit of running back juice. We're in this running back window that I love. Taking some Brian Robinson. I'm like, as you can see, I only have 4% Brian Robinson, so I'm not super excited for him, obviously, for this season. But he's been a little bit of a faller in this range. I take a ton of Damien Harris. He's my highest owned player. I take lots of Rashad Penny. As you see here, I have lots of Eli Mitchell. 28% Eli Mitchell, and I have lots of Eli Mitchell with the players that I've already drafted. So I do have a little small bet here with Jahan Dotson on Washington, which could set me up, so now I do have a little bit of setup for Sam Howell later, one of my guys. If the Tannehill thing doesn't work out, gives me some flexibility, gives me my bet on Washington, gives me a smidgy of ADP value, and a player who I'm like not in love with Brian Robinson, but there's also no real reason why I have like no Brian Robinson. And so again, just kind of using the hacker here, if you will. And here's another one, another guy I'm going to do this with. I'm breaking ties with kind of a lot of these things. Structural. I am in need of some running back juice and some running back upside. We're in this running back window. I despise all of the wide receivers, and I have 6 of them already. And I have an elite quarterback. And we're in the kind of dead area of tight ends. So when these running backs come up, right, take the guys who correlate and or our ADP values, which is what happened with B-Rob and Khalil Herbert. And it's maybe smoothing out your portfolio. I don't love Brian Robinson and Khalil Herbert, but again, there's not necessarily a reason why I have none of them, or I have none of them with these particular players, right? I'm going to draft a lot of Lamar. I'm going to draft a lot of Dobbins. I'm going to draft a lot of Tyreek Hill. I'm going to draft a lot of Devonta Smith and Jahan Dotson, etc. So I don't want to have all the same players with those guys on every single team. There's no point. Like, my bet isn't on 10 different players. My bet is on a handful of different players. And so I want to make sure that I'm getting all these different combinations around. These guys, my dog digging a hole to God knows where over in the corner. Let's see. ML says, I read a report that Odell's expected to get a lot of red zone targets. I know it's gross, but I could see him getting 2 scores in week 17. Yeah. If you were to Andrews, I guess I would bet, to be the leader in red zone targets, but think about Bateman, Odell, and certainly Zay. Odell is kind of the veteran, clearly has been a good contested catch player. He's got some of the best contested catches in the history of football on his track record. A little older and stuff now, but I imagine that they do kind of trust him there. I don't want to be banking on hopes that you get a bunch of red zone targets in July, but, Odell's my least favorite Raven, but I love the Ravens. And I don't want to have no Odell. I think his price is a little crazy, but he goes in this range, right? Where it's like, I don't know, you tell me. Allen Lazard versus Odell Beckham, Tyler Boyd, all these wide receivers. There's no real reason I should take, if I love the Ravens, there's no real reason I shouldn't have any Odell Beckham. So you just suck it up and you deal with the fact that your micro assessment about that player is not great. And you just say, if I'm betting on the Ravens, and in particular this team, you got to take them. The difference between, it's not even just structural drafting. It's kind of a combination of structural drafting and other little levers that oppose your player take and oppose your player ranking and those kinds of things. And it's not always just your player take. Quite honestly, like, you look at this team, my player takes, these are not my guys. Lamar is, Dobbins is, Tyreek is, and Devonta Smith. I mean, who doesn't like Devonta Smith? And Dotson. So it's like a handful of guys I really like and a handful of other guys I don't really like. And here's a guy I'm going to take that nobody likes, but we're swinging. We're going to get Dalton Kincaid as our tight end one here. He is a player who I was mostly out on to start the draft season, and I totally under my dog not into Dalton Kincaid apparently either. I want to actually get a little bit overweight Dalton Kincaid. I'm not trying to go crazy and get a billion% Dalton Kincaid or anything like that. But I think we've reached a price now, right? Pick 141, almost in the 13th round, where we're into, if we're evaluating these players from an auction dollar perspective, $2, maybe $3. These are punts. Once you get into the third, even like, I know it doesn't feel like it, but like 13th, 14th, 15th round, these guys are just punts. They're $1, $2, $3, $4 players in auction drafts. We have a first round pick, a tight end that got drafted in the first round on the Buffalo Bills. We were just clamoring for DeAndre Hopkins to go to the Buffalo Bills because we know how high powered their offense is. And we know that outside of Stephon Diggs, there's no target competition. We love Gabe Davis because of his spike weeks, no pun intended, upside, but he's not going to be demanding a billion targets. I should have been paying a little bit better attention here. Algier is typically my guy here, but let's go. And I love Kendre. We're going to take Kendre. I have Kendre just so much higher than Tank. Not so much higher. I really like Kendre Miller. Clearly, you saw the exposure to Kendre, so we're balancing the player take versus, just because Tank plays Baltimore in week 15 is not necessarily a reason to take him over a guy you have much higher. Got a little bit of ADP value, right? We're soaking back up ADP value. Kendre 8 picks after ADP. Khalil Herbert 5, right? B-Rob 6. We're making back up our ADP value on a couple of air quotes reaches. Let me get the board back up here. But Dalton Kincaid, a guy that I really do want to get a little bit of an overweight stance on at this new price. It's an incredibly cheap price. We don't get a lot of opportunities to to draft a NFL first round pick that the team clearly prioritized by moving up to go get him, that is a really talented receiver. I understand the rookie tight end narrative. I get it. On the Buffalo Bills with the potential to carve out a really huge target share. If you were to say one of these young tight ends that emerges into, the next Mark Andrews, the next George Kittle, the next whatever, TJ Hawkinson, Kincaid is near the top of that list, if not at the top of that list. Now, there are lots of concerns. There's a reason why he, isn't going in the 4th round or 3rd round like Kyle Pitts did. But the market is certain that he's not going to be a full-time player. He's not going to be a fantasy star. But when you are good at the game, you figure out a way to get onto the field. You figure out a way to earn targets. Now at this new price, right? If he's going up, the Njoku range, the Ingram range, the Freiermuth range, certainly Goddard area, Waller area, you're kind of paying a really steep price in order to find out if he's going to be a star. Now, 13th round, right? 12th, 13th round, which is where we're headed. All of a sudden, the market is very certain that no one on the Bills is really that valuable besides Stephon Diggs. And that's kind of crazy when you think about it. I think the scenarios in which Dalton Kincaid is a hit, I love doing it with this, where it's kind of late round tight end. Because if he emerges, again, as a first round NFL draft pick on one of the best offenses in the NFL with very little target competition, if he emerges, he's a stone cold smash. And I don't really want him. Not that I don't want him. If a guy's a smash, it's great for you anyway. But the gains you make from someone like Dalton Kincaid on a team that doesn't have an elite tight end, you're saying, well, what if Kincaid becomes elite? Not that I don't want George Kittle with him, but the payoff, if he becomes George Kittle or better than George Kittle for fantasy, is massive. He's my first tight end. So there's my Dalton Kincaid rate. Now are we going to take 2 rookie tight ends and really just piss the people off? Just looking through some. Okay, we're at pick 164. We got Titans set up. We got Washington set up. We're sitting at 1-5-6-1, so we're pretty flexible. Not a ton of awesome correlation, and I don't. So I am going to take. We're gonna have a fun rookie tight end team here. We know we got the elite quarterback, so we're only going to need two of those guys. So we take Sam Laporta, who I do love as well. Sneaky, not a ton of target competition on the Lions. Amon-Ra would be there. Stephon Diggs. Jamison Williams, when he comes back, would be their Gabe Davis. And then, the Jahmyr Gibbs is like the James Cook / Damian Harris / whatever, Latavius Murray. The Lions tight ends, even after TJ Hawkinson was gone last year, Brock Wright catching multiple touchdowns, Shane Zylstra, James Mitchell. These guys were producing for fantasy as a collective. It was just 3 dudes. If Laporta can kind of consolidate that as an early 2nd round pick tight end, I think the rookie tight end thing is fascinating because we've sort of gotten a little bit out over our skis, I feel like. Let me look. So not a lot of week 17 correlation, obviously, as you can see here. When I click show playoff view, I just have the Miami-Baltimore little stack going on here. Pretty wide open, though, at what we can do the rest of the way, which is very nice. Quarterbacks are certainly falling, but none of these guys really make sense for me. I don't have any stacking partners with them. I want to be drafting Tannehill or Howell. Don't like a lot of the running backs, and I can wait on that a little bit. So I'm going to take a guy here who doesn't necessarily correlate, to the main teams, but does. Paris Campbell. I want to make sure I have more of him, but he plays, as you can see here, New Orleans, who have Kendre, and then the Eagles, who have Devonta Smith in weeks 15 and 16. And I also really want to be targeting the Rams really all year. Like if I'm playing weekly winners, do you play the Rams? Yes. Okay, I like you. But in week 17, any playoff week, but in week 17, I think the Rams are one of the most likely teams to be kind of the Coors Field of this year's NFL best ball. And I know Paris Campbell's risen up a little bit, but in this tournament, his ADP's mostly been stagnant here in the fast puppy. And I just, I think you saw there, I had the 3% Paris Campbell or something like that. I want to get more of him onto my teams. I want to get more Giants all around onto my teams. Sorry, I did not mean to miss you guys. Chris asked, what do you consider a big prize pool? They have your eye for $5 with 75K. Yeah. Oh, sorry. It was your answering, Clint. What's the lowest buy in big prize pool on Underdog? I'm not on there yet. Yeah, I would say these puppies, you'll get some maybe a little bit cheaper, right? To $4 but generally somewhere around the $5 price point. Like these puppies are where it's at, to answer your question, Clint. This is hilarious. This was the Odell. We're going to change the title to the Odell Beckham stream, because even the Overflow draft, Wounded Geese says, just did the same thing in the Overflow, drafted Odell Beckham at 101. Olaf asks, anybody like the Cincy rookie wide receivers? I do like Charlie Jones, a little bit more on DraftKings, a little bit more on weekly winners, but I'm going to have a sprinkle of Charlie Jones in the last round of these drafts, probably a little bit more in Best Ball Mania, where, my God, it's so top heavy. There's regular season prizes, and he could be a guy that can really catapult you up as a 18th round pick, but also a really, really, really low probability 18th round pick. They all are, but he certainly is. But I like Charlie Jones. Great. He was so, if you watched college football, or you played college football DFS in particular, I mean, you just like had to play him this year at Purdue. Almost didn't matter the matchup. The guy was just drawing 16, 17 targets in games and was effective in the Big Ten. Greg says, in terms of CLV, you could see Kincaid scream right back up the board after a nice preseason highlight or two. 100%, right? They come out in week 2 of the preseason, starters on the first drive. He plays every snap and he catches a touchdown. You think he's going to go in the 140s? No, because that would tell everyone there's at least an inkling that, oh shit, we were wrong, right? We were wrong about Kincaid. So I think I want. Oof, woof. So I think we're gonna 2-6-8-2 this probably. There's all those. We're gonna take Jalen Hyatt. A little smidge early, but again, you see, I wanted to get some Giants going on here. We're going to take another running back and another quarterback and ride with the rookie. Tight ends. I love doing these kinds of player combinations that we know our opponents are uncomfortable with doing. I'm like, the thing about best ball is you're probably most likely just not going to lose. Only 2 out of 12 teams advance, or you're just not going to win. I know on any given individual team, only 2 out of 12 teams advance. Even if you advance, you don't make a whole lot of money. I like to do some of the things that other people are uncomfortable with doing, and the double rookie tight end is absolutely one of them. But the upside, I think anyone would be able to tell you that the rookie tight end narrative is an average across most of the tight ends, and the most likely scenario is that they're not smashes, but it can happen. And the NFL is evolving, and these guys are becoming largely just like wide receivers. It's not the same game as 10, 15 years ago when the rookie tight ends were like really not going to make it. Look at last year. It was not till the end of the season, but Trey McBride pops up finally in week 17, actually, with a big game. Isaiah Likely had some productive moments throughout the course of the entire season. And when Mark Andrews missed, Isaiah Likely was the tight end one, was an absolute smash, drawing double-digit targets. So here in the 17th round, we're just going to go ahead and lock up Ryan Tannehill. Just want to double check. Yeah, okay. We're just going to lock up Ryan Tannehill. And then Because so we take Tannehill there. You might say, why did you take Tannehill? 15 picks ahead of ADP. These 17th, 18th round, I'll be honest, I don't care. I don't really care about ADP. The last thing you want to happen in this is you get to the end and you're stubborn about whether you have Zamir White or any other running. Now, Zamir White's maybe a bad example with the Josh Jacobs news, but being stubborn, all these late round guys, particularly at running back and wide receiver, are just scratch off lottery tickets. So don't be so stubborn to ADP in the 17th round that you screw up your team with that quarterback, right? If your team needs Sam Howell, take him. If your team needs Ryan Tannehill, take him. Whether you have, right, Malik Davis versus Kyren Williams versus CPAT versus whatever, they're all the same bet. But not all the quarterbacks are the same bet on your team. You need to make sure that you get the appropriate guy when it makes sense to get the appropriate guy. ADP be damned. I'm not saying take Tannehill in the 15th round. You don't need to go that far. But like people will say, oh, you could have just waited. But there's no upside in waiting. The upside is you get the same scratch off lottery ticket running back. The downside is your whole team isn't ruined. You can win without Ryan Tannehill, but you built this team for Ryan Tannehill or Sam Howell, and they both go, and you ruined your team because you wanted to get the guy. You wanted your brain was telling you, but that ADP thing that I see on my screen, I need that. Let's see here. Yeah, Kincaid gets 3 targets on the first drive, and Moss is a future Safeway employee to trying to earn a practice squad spot. Jesus Christ, I can't read. Moss is a future Safeway employee trying to earn a practice squad spot. He's flying up the board. But yeah, that'll happen. Remember Marquez Callaway? I'm sure everybody that's been drafting in best ball land remembers Marquez Callaway because, yeah, you want to talk about a screamer up the board? That was it. All right, I want to make sure that you're still around here. I got a guy I'm specifically targeting on this team. There we go. So I mentioned the Rams before. I know Sony Michel signed there. I actually prefer Kyren Williams to, why the hell is this? To Zach Evans or Sony Michel. And I get if you don't, but also just quickly, the most important thing you see on your screen here is the fact that he correlates. I don't have a ton of him. He correlates across every single playoff week, and I'm looking for a running back at this spot in the draft. So it gives me, so now we look, right? So here's my teams, my kind of team exposures. So if you click on team view, I'm on the team view here. Lamar, Dobbins, and Odell, Tannehill, Hopkins, Burks. Then I got some little secondary stacks with Brian Robinson and Jahan Dotson and Paris Campbell and Jalen Hyatt. Then the rest of my players are kind of spread out amongst those teams. But then I go look at the playoffs. I go look at week 17. Getting Kyren Williams, if I just said I'm worried about the Rams by the end of the season and that the Rams are tanking at the end of the year, Kyren Williams is more likely to play. Now I got a little fun, super, super late, super, super cheap Giants, Rams game stack to go with my Ravens and Dolphins in week 17. If I look at week 16, which you can click here and you can view any single week. I know you can't see on your screen, but you can look in week 1. Like we can look at week 1. If we want to look at my week 1 game stacks, oh baby, Titans, Saints, and Rams. And I don't think Kyron's going to be dominating the Seahawks in week 1, but you never know. We look at week 16. Look at that. Got the Titans with our little Zach Charbonnet bring back. The Giants play my Devonta Smith, and then Kendre and Kyren play in week 16. And in week 15, some more crossover, right? Giants play the Saints. So now I got Kendre. My Giants guys are playing against somebody every single playoff week, and so is Kyren Williams. Every single playoff week, I've got this correlation built in. I also have it with Devonta Smith, right? Not in week 17 because I don't have a Cardinal. But get the point. Mixing and matching through these little bit of correlations, and you can see it here on your screen is pretty fun. But to close out, you can see my team here. We talked a lot about the running back chaos at the beginning of this show, and the Titans. I did not soak up any of and there really wasn't quite the running back falls that I'm expecting to happen, but I am expecting it to happen moving forward. But we started from the 104 with Tyreek Hill, came back with Devonta Smith in the second round, Lamar Jackson, then DeAndre Hopkins, J.K. Dobbins, Jahan Dotson, and Treylon Burks. So we set up our Titan stack. We set up the Baltimore Ravens. And then these assholes in this draft, Humble Legend takes Rashad Bateman, and our boy KZ takes Zay Flowers. No correlation, you shitheads. I guess Humble Legend has correlation. But that leads me to take Zach Charbonnet and Odell Beckham in the 8th and 9th rounds. Brian Robinson, Khalil Herbert, Dalton Kincaid, Kendre Miller, Sam Laporta, and then Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt, Ryan Tannehill, and Kyron Williams. I love to do those little things at the end of drafts where I would love to not have to what we would call an oh shit stack. Rob and I would call an oh shit stack, meaning I don't want to get to the end and have to draft a quarterback that's uncorrelated with my team. So I like setting up my late round quarterbacks like we did here with Ryan Tannehill, right? And I was also set for Sam Howell. So I had two different ways that I could go with that second quarterback that I'm taking with Lamar Jackson. But I can also build in these little mini correlations with my late round wide receivers and running backs. And the Giants and Rams actually are such a good one to do so. There's an infinite amount of Giants and Rams available late in drafts, right? Slayton, Hodgins, Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt. On the Rams side, Tutu, Higbee's a little bit earlier, Van's a little bit earlier, but still. And then all the Rams running backs, backup running backs to Cam Akers are available there. All the Giants backup running backs. Now there's a little more upside with those guys with Saquon, right? Eric Gray, Matt Breida, Gary Brightwell. Pick your flavor. All those guys are available back here, and you can create some fun little correlations. Could be one Giant, one Ram, two Rams, one Giant, vice versa. But you can do these things, and they're not the only team you can do this with, the only game that you can do this with, or the only correlations you can do at the end of drafts. But I love kind of building those out at the very end of drafts. That's going to do it. That was a really fun, fast puppy. Be on the lookout we are through 6 rounds of our DraftKings $555 draft, and soon to be through 8 rounds where our next video will come out building a killer team in the DraftKings high stakes Millie Maker. Just to hit, sorry, I know I'm scrolling back and being obnoxious, but Clint, if you're not on Underdog yet, if you see in your to use promo code SPIKE, you can get 100% deposit bonus. $100 get you 20 entries into the puppy or the next puppy, and they'll give you a free $100 if you use promo code SPIKE. So check that out. Check out our good friends at drafters.com. Cumulative scoring best ball. You can also use promo code SPIKE there, and you can get a free month of a Spike Week subscription if you sign up with Drafters. But that'll do it for us tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, probably with our next video in our DraftKings draft, and also with our Spike Week Sickos Tuesday night show. Last thing, I'll also be on Pat Corrine, Legendary Sickos co-host with me, founder of Legendary Upside, is running a special stream tomorrow, 7 hours with 18 different people to commemorate his Best Ball Mania 3 winning team that was drafted on July 18th. And I will be on there, myself and Sean Siegel, at I can't remember what time, noon, 11, sometime around lunchtime. You can join me and Pat and Sean tomorrow there, and we'll be back here on this YouTube tomorrow evening. Catch you guys later. Have a good one. Peace.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.